Those who quit their job due to their employers asking them to do something which you considered to be morally wrong. What's your story? My dad was a hospital administrator at a mental health hospital. He had between 60 and 90 patients in his facility at any given time, plus several outpatient groups going on. Of those 60 to 90, there were a few that simply weren't going to get better. After working with them for several months, looking over their history, and knowing what was going on with them mentally/chemically, he knew that them staying in the hospital wasn't going to help them. There wasn't anything he could do for them, so he went to discharge them. The owners told him not to and to keep them inpatient for as long as their insurance/Medicare would pay for it. They wanted to bleed these people dry, even knowing they wouldn't get better. My dad refused. He was fired 8 weeks later. Worked on a pilot season of a sitcom. There were child actors on the show. One day I overheard one of the parents bragging to their friend on the phone that they aren't working, the kiddies. I chose not to come back for the second season after I saw that. Worse than that was my dad, who caught a parent feeding a baby Benadryl so it would stay asleep for a scene in a soap opera. He reported it and nothing happened. I was probably 16 over 17 at the time and the only certified lifeguard at a local water park. Everyone else was company qualified. Whatever that means. Anyway, one day a very large and severe thunderstorm was moving in on the horizon, and as soon as I saw lightning I, naturally, blew my whistle and ordered the patrons out of the section I was monitoring and radioed my co-workers to do the same. Almost immediately, the owner came huffing and puffing over to me and demanded to know what the fuck I was thinking. The storm is about to be right on top of us, and I'm responsible for the safety of our customers. So, I had them get out. Is something wrong? You're costing us money, that's what's wrong. We are not closing for the day. By this point, there were a number of reasons I should have left/quit, and I finally did. After calmly handing the owner my whistle, I looked him in the eyes and said, "You know what? I can't do this anymore. I quit. And I hope you remember this when somebody finally dies at this shithole." While I'm not sure if he remembers our conversation, sadly a child did drown at the facility less than a month after I left, and the place finally shut down. Part of me feels responsible for the drowning, as it's possible that I could have been monitoring his section that day. Oh well. I was a teller at Wells Fargo for a few months. It was more of a sales position than anything else. We were instructed to send any customer with any kind of issue to a banker so they could open them new accounts instead of just fixing their problem. They especially targeted elderly people. I flat out refused to do that and would instead fix any problems that I was capable of. Management repeatedly told me to be a team player. They couldn't care less that I never made any calculation mistakes with the money. On one slow day I watched the manager walk over to a banker, hand her a $20, and tell her to open an account. I don't know if it was opened in her name or someone else's. A few times I was asked why I didn't ask a customer in the drive-thru to come in and open a credit card. They never liked my answer of, "They're in the drive-thru because they don't want to come inside." I was miserable every day there until I quit. My dad. His boss wanted him to work on my little brother's 4th birthday, which happened to be a Saturday, so it's double pay, and he's under no obligation to be there. He told them he wasn't going to miss his son's birthday. Boss says, "You know you can buy a lot of presents with double time." Dad says, "Don't care. I'm not missing my kid's birthday." Boss, "That kid's gonna have a lot of birthdays." Dad, "Yeah, and I'm gonna be there for every one of them." Dad got laid off a few weeks later. Long story, but it is one close to my heart. Still, bothers me to this day. Worked at a private school as a teacher. I was also the first aid attendant due to my previous job as a wilderness emergency medical tech. Now, this school was a status symbol for the parents and failure was not an option for the students. Not enough discussion about mental health, substance abuse, etc. Because all these girls were just too good, and every single one was destined for greatness. A number of times I had girls crying in my office, seeking some type of assurance when they got a 70% of a test, or due to an insane amount of pressure being placed on them by their parents. Anyways, around the end of the year, the school does an award ceremony, essentially celebrating all the top kids. Terrible thing to do in my opinion. Hard work was not celebrated, grades were. Needless to say, the day of the ceremony I get called down to the sick bay. I have a student showing some very odd vitals. Admits to taking an Advil for a headache this morning. She is a quiet grade 9, a new student, ESL. Parents live in another country, underperforming. Wonderful kid though. Several friends are with her, couple staff. She is getting worse. Blood pressure and heart rate are really weird. She asks all of them to step out except for me, and she collapses into my lap, hugging as hard as she can. I'm trying to get info. Then it hits me. Her vitals are in line with a drug overdose. I hold her and tell her it's okay and ask the hard question. She admits to having ingested a bottle of Advil on the way to school. She is crying and losing consciousness. IMS is called. I administer O2, water. She makes it, pukes, gets picked up. Cops come. It's a legal formality. I'm trying to line up some guardians besides myself to go to the hospital. During this entire time, I'm trying to page my administration. No one from admin comes. In fact, when I go to inform them in person, I'm told they knew about it all. But the ceremony was about to go, so they had to be greeting parents. They then inform me that I'm not to go to the hospital because I have to present some awards. I'm standing there, in shock, and simply explain I have just dealt with a suicide attempt, and she has no family. She has done this because she is struggling, and today's ceremony pushed a kid who is clearly lacking support to an edge. And I am 100% going to the hospital. I stayed at the hospital for 2 days. Told the school the next week I was taking the year to complete my masters and travel. I knew I was leaving, but I had the ability to give myself some space. The school lost a kid to suicide this past year. An amazing kid. It is a pressure cooker. I can't support a system like that as an educator. I was there for 5 years. I loved every single one of those girls. But that type of school mentality is not why I'm an educator. I worked as a receptionist at a doggy daycare / boarding / training facility for 1 whole day. During my training, I learned that the position is responsible for upselling various packages for boarding stays. Your dog gets a treat every day, a softer bed, etc., which multiple employees admitted never actually got provided. It was basically a peace of mind fee, so the owner could feel better about leaving their dog while they were away, thinking they gave their dog a luxury stay, but really all the dogs stayed in the same tiny kennels. Think like an animal shelter setup. The final straw was when a woman came to pick up her dog that had been there for boot camp, a 2-week stay at the facility with daily one-on-one training sessions with a professional trainer. They do a little demo when you pick up your pet to show what the dog has learned during their stay, and then they rope you in for more lessons. Before the woman arrived, the trainer admitted he hadn't spent any time with the dog at all, and the dog had basically been left in the kennel for its whole stay. Based on the casual reaction of all the other employees present, this was totally normal. The girl that was training me told me it was basically my job to talk the pet owner through the demo about how good the dog had been, and make it sound like the dog has made great progress, but could benefit from additional lessons. I told them I wasn't comfortable lying to customers, and refused to come back. I wanted the job because I love dogs, but these people were cheating pet owners out of a ridiculous amount of money, and it made me so sick. I regret not doing more to make what they were doing public, but I was young at the time and didn't know what to do. My first job at 16 years old was at a small town mom and pop burger shop. Eventually we got a new manager who started making changes, which included handing out a church flyer with the table's bill. I was way uncomfortable doing that, and I still had faith at the time. He gave me a do it or you quit ultimatum, so I quit. 2 other employees quit over further confrontations with the manager, and the rest left before the end of the week. The shop ended up closing after the owners bought their son a new ugly H2 Hummer thing instead of paying rent. I worked at a Taco Bell in college. The manager was a piece of work. I was night manager. I only worked there a year. Our store closed at 3 AM. Yay, college across the street. And his rule was that we had a half hour to clean the store after that. If we couldn't finish in a half hour, we could clock out and finish, or we could call him at 3:30 AM and tell him why we didn't finish, and then he would decide if we got paid for finishing or not. Yeah, fuck that shit. I'm not going to tell people to work for free. I'm not going to work for free. It never came up until one night it was just me and another woman working. At 2:50 am we got slammed. I guess some frat house had a party and they were all starving. They all came in at once. The other woman and I kicked ass. We made $300 in 1 hour. This was back when tacos were 36 cents each, so that's a lot of damn tacos. When we finally got to lock the doors it was already 3:50 am. Yeah, I'm not staying to clean this shit up for free. So I called the manager. He was not happy to be awakened. First, he berated me for not calling him as soon as the rush hit. The guy lived over 45 minutes away. There was no way in hell he'd be able to get there in time to really help, and I would have lost several minutes just calling him. Secondly, he tried to tell me that, since I didn't call for the rush, my only option was to make the other woman stay, and we cleaned for free. I told him no, and that it was illegal to try and make people work for free. He finally relented and agreed to pay us. So generous. The next incident was when money went missing. This went on for a couple of weeks and he finally decided we would have assigned registers. He would count the register before he assigned someone, and only he could count it after we were done. No problem. I know how to take money and make change. Except the first day he implemented it, he kept telling me to let someone else use my register. If you want me to share this register, I'm no longer responsible if it comes up short. He insisted I was. I told him I wasn't. He decided it was too much trouble to assign registers. That works for me. He finally caught the culprit. One of the new hires had watched the manager open the safe, memorized the combination, and was stealing directly from the safe. The next incident involved how much my customers liked me. I was young and happy back then. I always smiled. I always made sure customers felt welcome. One lady would come in with her 3-year-old daughter. I always interacted with the little girl and made her laugh and smile. One day, they came in, and the mom told me the little girl had a gift for me. I started to protest, but the mom let me know it wasn't anything expensive, just a little dime store necklace she'd paid $1 for, because the little girl wanted it for me. It was so sweet. There was also an older man who would bring me a sundae from the ice cream store next door. He was never creepy, and I think he was just a lonely old guy and I talked to him like a human being. So one day, my manager approaches me and tells me I have to tell these customers they are not allowed to bring me gifts. I remind him that I'm not soliciting these gifts, and I'm not giving anything in return for them, except good customer service. I told him, if he wanted them to stop bringing me stuff, he could tell them himself, because I wasn't going to do it. You want to tell a 3-year-old they can't color a picture for me, or bring me a flower? You be the asshole and tell her. He dropped the issue. Next, we had a lady come in and slip on our floor. She apparently had a metal nail file in her back pocket, and it stabbed her in the, but when she fell, I'm not sure what made her fall, because our floor was not wet. I made sure she was okay, asked her to wait while I called the manager. He wasn't in the store, and then called and let him know what happened. He wanted me to get the metal nail file from the lady. He wanted me to ask her for, and then just not give it back, so basically steal it from her. How about no? I just gave her his contact info and sent her on her way. I don't think she ever pursued the issue. I'd stayed this long because I was working full time at this place and going to school full time. I needed the job to pay for my life. The final straw came next. We had 2 homeless people, a young guy and girl, who came in once in a blue moon and asked for salt. They wanted salt because they were living off bags of dry dog food, and I'm guessing the salt helped them get it down. We didn't charge for our condiments, so I would just give them a few packets of salt and they'd thank me and leave. When my manager found out, he was livid. He told me I was no longer allowed to give out salt for free. I had to charge 3 cents a packet for it. Okay, it's your business. If you don't want to give stuff out for free, I get it. The next time the homeless people came in, I slipped the guy a quarter and he bought salt with it. My manager was furious. How dare I give this guy a quarter to buy salt with? Well, you did say they had to pay for salt and they did. That made them customers. It's really not his business who I give my money to and for what. I'd finally had enough of this guy. I told him that in a month, I would have been at the store for a year. At 1 year, Because I was night manager, I would get 1 week of paid vacation. I told him if he'd let me work another month so I could get my vacation pay, I'd quit and he'd be rid of me. He knew he'd never be able to fire me for cause, so he agreed. For the next month, I kept asking him about my week's paid vacation in front of other people. Hey boss, I'll get my week's paid vacation when I leave, right? He'd agree. I did this 3 to 4 times over the next month. So I quit and get my last paycheck a week later. You guessed it. No paid vacation money on my check. I went back in and asked him about it. He started backpedaling. Oh, hell no. I immediately went to the corporate office. I told them that I was promised this vacation pay in return for working my year and quitting, and I didn't care if they thought I deserved it or not. The manager said I'd get it in front of several witnesses and they better pay me or I would be contacting the Department of Labor and I would be filing for unemployment. It's important to note that my manager had fired a woman about 6 months prior to my quitting. She was denied unemployment because he said he fired her for cause. He actually did fire her for cause. She was a terrible worker, but she'd been sleeping with a co-worker and he'd agreed to testify on her behalf. My manager lost, and he had to pay her back wages, and she got unemployment. So the company was well aware they might not look good if they denied me my vacation pay. They cut a check on the spot, and I may have broken speed limits getting to their bank to cash it. So, what happened to the manager? He's currently a C-level member of Scientology. If you ask me, it's a match made in heaven. I was waiting tables at a local restaurant. Being the clumsy dip I am, I accidentally dropped a plate of food in the kitchen. My manager just looked at me and told me to pick it up, put it back on the plate, and serve it. I refused. I was quickly fired short after. However, the restaurant was shut down for health violations a few months later, so justice was served.